Okay, let's call this meeting to order. This is a joint special meeting of the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance, and I guess, Beth, you'd like to lead off?
Thank you very much, Matt. Good evening, everyone. I have a few brief comments, and then I'll turn the presentation over to both chiefs. A major theme that is coming into focus for our town is the need to reinvest in aging infrastructure. The Board of Selectmen has had a subcommittee looking at the need for public safety radio system upgrade for some time now. That committee met on October 25th, most recently, and after looking carefully at the proposed details, voted unanimously to move the upgrade of the radio system project forward to the Boards of Selectmen and Finance for our consideration. It's important to note that our current simulcast radio system had a 12 to 15-year life expectancy when it was installed in 2003. We are now at the very end of the equipment's useful life. Furthermore, a consultant hired by the town to help us address our radio system needs, who's here tonight, thank you, help answer questions, has informed us that due to the age of the equipment, replacement parts are increasingly difficult to find. This is obviously a very serious matter, and the project to upgrade the system must take a high priority. It will take approximately 12 months once a replacement radio system is approved for the equipment to be fully installed, tested, and operational. If we were to approve the project in December of 2017, we should expect to be able to retire the old system no sooner than December 2018. With this estimated timeline in mind, tonight we're meeting jointly as the Boards of Selectmen and Finance to receive a presentation, thank you for that, and consider a recommendation for action on this project. I'm looking forward to working together with the membership of both boards to see this project through to a special town meeting for the voters to decide, approve as soon as possible. Thank you all for being here. And with that, I will turn the meeting over to Chief Rowland and Chief Capiello. Thank you.
I want to introduce, this is Paul Zito. He's our consultant that the town hired a year and a half ago. Ago.
Hi, everybody.
Thank you for coming.
No problem.
So with that, we'll, you want to start, Chief?
Yeah, I'd just like to start by saying just a couple quick clarifications, just so everybody's on the same page in case you don't understand what we're talking about. When we refer to the radio system itself, we're referring to our public safety simulcast radio system, which is consists of the towers strategically placed throughout the town, and then a console from the dispatch area where the data is transmitted from. And when we talk about the radios, we're referring pretty much to the radio devices themselves, the handheld portable radios that our guys, the police officers and the firefighters carry on their person, as well as the radios that are permanently mounted in the fire apparatus in police vehicles. Over the past couple of years, we've upgraded all of our radios, the police and the fire department, our portables and our vehicle radios, and they're all currently in place and compatible to this new proposed radio system that we're looking to move forward with. And the problem is that right now, due to the age and the failing of the radio system, it's not allowing our portable radios and our car radios to, get their maximum use efficiency. So the goal of the radio system is pretty much threefold. We're looking to increase radio coverage and dependability and reliability. We're looking to improve interoperability between the police, fire, and EMS, and looking to expand it even further to incorporate the Public Works Department into the radio communication system as well. That's really the missing link that we have now. With them, especially during storms when they're out clearing the roads, snowstorms, and dealing with downed wires and down trees. So really, it's we're looking to improve and make interoperability between all of our departments: police, fire, EMS, and public works, critical during emergency situations to ensure the safety of the residents, the entire community, and all of our staff and personnel as well. That's where we're at. With that, we'll move into the...
Okay, so like the chief talked about, one of the things is you're going to hear some tonight about a reliable radio system. And reliable, it's if you look up on the screen, it's all up here. It's consistently clear two-way communication between the officers and firefighters on the grounds, as well as communicate with dispatch and with public works. Safety of those responding to incidents, have the necessary information when responding, be able to call for help when we're on the scene, be able to call for additional resources if we need ambulances, more apparatus. Other towns, police officers are on the road and having trouble with system reliability when they do traffic stop, or if they even have to go into a home. It's when firefighters are calling for help and resources is also within a building or house, we have trouble talking out, because remember, when you're out in the open, you have a better chance of getting back to you. When you're in a structure, you have to go through the wall or through the window to get out, to be able to have a better communication with dispatch. Sure, this is a call, and the chief's going to talk about this one. This has to do with, this is a police incident, and he'll basically walk you through what led up to this.
Yeah, you can play it first.
30-103, come in. Add it up here, it'll copy me. Copy Paul at 111. Roger that, 3. Roger that. 111. I don't know if you're getting it, but there's a lot of static or dead air. Roger that. Relay that info.
So this was an incident just a couple weeks ago. It was an attempted burglary in progress. Somebody had called in with a description. Personnel started going down there, and as the dispatcher was relaying the clothing description and everything of the suspect, they weren't able to pick it up. So it got to the point where they actually had to call in on their cell phone and ask them for the details. And then once they got down there, it was definitely the real thing. I mean, it was a guy was between the houses. He had a couple of different layers of clothes on, so he could, shed some clothes and look a little bit different. And the guys, even when they got down there and they got out of their cars, it was down where the houses are a little bit closer. There were 3 or 4 houses apart, and the suspect was in some of the yards, and the officers could see each other, but they couldn't communicate on their radios. They could pretty much holler out to each other if they had to, but when they're trying to talk discreetly and coordinate their efforts, it was totally unsuccessful. Nobody could hear them. They couldn't hear each other, even though they could see each other. They're maybe 30 or 40 yards apart.
The next call we're going to hear is a fire tone go off, and this has happened. This has gotten progressively worse, actually, in the last month. This is one of them. There's probably 10 or 12 of them. The tone would go off, but you would hear you wouldn't hear the dispatcher, because there was an issue with the actual system, the console, and the console went down. So if we play it, you'll hear it come right over. So this is basically what the fire department hears when they get toned out for a call. So right there, that's it. There should be the dispatcher coming on, tell us what the emergency is, where we're going, and all information, and there's nothing coming on. So about a minute later, car 201, the fire marshal got on. He was in town, and this is what they talked about.
201 the radio. 201, come in. Thank you. We got the tone. What's our location? Roger, I'm unable to send the tone out. But it's 121 Ford. 121 Ford. It's a public hazard. A wire from the pole to the house. It's stuck in the power and it's touching the ground. Residents requesting it checked out.
So it was a pretty low priority call, but when we had the hurricane back a few years ago, Hurricane Irene, we had the same issue where we had a tree come down, pull the line off of the house, and we actually had a structure fire because of that. So it could go from a low priority to a really high priority pretty quick. The current radio system is installed in 2003. The life expectancy, like Beth was talking about, was 12 to 15 years. We're at the end of that, so the system's becoming less reliable. Communications are dropping and unclear, and it happens roughly 40 times, at least 40 times a week at a minimum, if not more. So parts of the console are no longer in production. When the console was purchased, it was purchased basically 2 months. The console was obsolete when it was purchased by 2 months. So they still made parts for the next 5 to 7 years, but we well exceeded that, and we're the last department, we're the last town in the state that has a console like this. They've all upgraded and gone to a new, more reliable console. So they're just trying to keep pieces from other consoles. Northeastern's taking other consoles out, and they're holding parts for us. So in case something goes down, they try to put it together so we don't have a catastrophic failure. But it is, we're at that point right now. The current catastrophic failure, there's other things. We would have to appropriate some money to get some base stations on a temporary basis until we can approve money for a new radio console, which is roughly $500,000. But the actual temporary fix could be $15,000 to $20,000 right now. But that's not going to be a permanent fix. It would just be a temporary fix. We have deficiencies in coverage. Large area of the town is without radio coverage. We're going to see that later on with the mapping. We had a recent serious motor vehicle accident, and we had trouble talking back to the units on the scene and also back to dispatch and dispatch to the guys out on the scene. This call is roughly 5 minutes. This call was roughly 45 minutes long. We shrunk it to 5 minutes, but it's going to be constant. So there usually is gaps in between this. We just kind of shrink it down so you guys can get the feeling of it. This is really going to hit home why we need a new radio system here.
Roger, airbags deployed. Roger, the ambulance is on a run. Hey, go ahead, it's very staticky. Sorry, can you repeat? It's very staticky and I had the fire department coming through. Medic 44, do you have any updates for us, Steve? You're very static and really not. You would, wait, no, I can't copy anything you said. It's pure static. Roger, we have a problem with our radios up here. Hold with us. We'd have to call someone in. Okay, go ahead. Roger, I can barely hear you. I'm going to call your cell. It's very muffled. I can't copy anything. 2-1 to squad 10. Squad 10. 2-1 to squad 10. Squad 10. I can't read the radio. Can you hear me? Aye. 28, the squad head. Your location? Car 2 on the radio. 2-1 to Woodbridge Street. Car 2-1 to car 2-8. 28, squad says that Roger, call the PD and tell them to get northeastern headed out for the radio, please.
Car 2-1, I copied. I'll call Northeastern as well.
2-1 to 2-8, did she copy on northeastern? Yeah, Roger, she did. Car 2-1 to radio.
Car 2-1, go ahead.
Car 2-1 to car 2-8. 28. Roger, try calling the PD, tell them I need 2 flatbeds and a regular out.
Car 2-1, I copied that. I could hear you. For some reason, you can't hear me. Two flatbeds and tow truck. Regular duty.
Flatbeds and a regular out. 2-2 radio, that's 2 flatbeds and 1 hook.
Roger, I'll get them en route. I'm on right now with Northwest. Hopefully, they're sending someone.
Squad 4 is on scene, 63 and 67. 2 flatbeds and a hook.
Roger, spot one. Person will be en route. She said she doesn't have a time, but I told her it's an emergency, so they should be right away.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
The Northeastern radio, fix the radios, they should be en route. I told them it was an emergency, we have no radio service.
Thank you.
Okay, so that was a serious motor vehicle accident. We had multiple ambulances there, and we just had trouble communicating back and forth. So it is a problem. We run into it a lot on the parkway when we're actually partially in the tunnel. We usually station a unit outside the tunnel so we can relay to a unit, and then the unit can relay back to dispatch.
And you might have heard on that one too, at one point there, they reached out to, our dispatcher reached out to one of our patrol officers, just said, I'll call you on your cell, because they couldn't get through. And we do the same thing. A lot of times somebody on scene isn't able to get the reception all the way through to dispatch, so somebody else that's responding, that's like, halfway in between or whatever, kind of relays it, and that's pretty much similar to what they did.
Okay, current radio system, no interoperability with Public Works. Police and fire can talk to each other. We cannot talk to Public Works. The only way to talk to Public Works right now is we have to call dispatch, and dispatch has to get on another radio to contact them. Their system is from the 1970s and is obsolete. They're on what we call a low band frequency, and we're looking to move them to an ultra high frequency where police and fire are at right now. Interoperability is crucial for efficiency and safety, especially during the storms. And it doesn't have to be a hurricane. A week and a half ago, we had a windstorm, rainstorm on that Sunday, and they were out with us, and we had no communication between them. So we were trying to locate whoever was on the road to give us a hand with the loader to start opening roads up. It's also a safety issue for Public Works. If they're directing traffic for regular road work or whatever, they have no portables. This would allow them to have portables and to have radios in their vehicles that actually work well with the new system, so they can communicate. So if they're out plowing roads, they have a decent system to talk back to. Public Works does not have radios, yes. So that's part of this, yes. Okay. This is basically how the simulcast system works. So basically, we have the dispatcher up in here. taking the 911 call, and then what happens, how the system works is, this is called a comparator. So when they key up, or we key up in the field, it goes to this unit here, and with the sites that we have, these are all the different radio sites we're proposing to have within the town, all strategically placed with the help of Paul Zito here. How it works is, we key up the radio, it goes to this voter comparator, and then it goes out to all the towers. It picks the best tower. It happens in milliseconds. Picks the best tower. It comes back and it says, if it's, say, the police department tower right out here, it says this is the best tower, and then it sends a signal back to all these towers, and it rebroadcasts it. So it's a little confusing, but it's basically how it works. So if you follow the line, it goes into there, it goes back out, and then you can hear it over here. Sure. So we're actually going to do it on the map, but okay, yep. The new radio system will provide interoperability between police, fire, EMS, and public works, increased efficiency and safety. All existing police, fire, and EMS portables and mobiles are compatible with the new system, meaning we've already replaced our portable radios and mobiles in the last 5 years, both police and fire. New portable handheld radios and mobiles for public works would be needed. It's included in this. Increased coverage and reliability. Right now, when the system was designed, we're roughly 75%. It was roughly 75% of the town was covered. That's when it was optimal. And now with deficiencies, we're not there. So we're looking to go to 95% coverage. Hired Paul Zito, New England Radio Consultants, to work with us to determine the best locations for the system design and the coverage maps. So what you're looking at is on this map right here, it's going to say when optimal. This was the map that was done back in 2003, and right now, this is talk in. So basically, with the unit in the field, whether it be a police officer, firefighter in the field talking into dispatch, this is the green, the darker green is where we have coverage, and where we don't have coverage is all this location up here, in here, and some down here. This is based on 3 tower sites, the transfer station, the police department, Bradley Road, and there's actually a receive site at Oak Lane Country Club right now on the tower there. What we're proposing is this. So you can see a lot more green is shaded in, so we'd have a lot more coverage. We still are going to have some deficiencies, but there's really nothing we can do about that because of the topography of Woodbridge. There's a lot of hills and mountains and stuff we just can't get around. So, but the majority of the town would be covered. Talk out. This is when dispatch is talking out to the unit. So it changes a little bit, and you can see this is a lot more shaded in because just with the power, what we have. But what we see here is we have the transfer station, the police department, and Bradley Road. Those are our transmit and receive sites right now. What we're looking to do is we're looking to eliminate the transfer station site and go to the Seymour Tower. It's called the EMAC Tower. It's up on Silver Mine Road in Seymour. And what that would do is that would give us more height where we are now, when it actually looks down 67. So it covers the whole transfer station site, and it also looks down 67 Seymour Road, and it fills in a lot more. So that would be a positive for us. The other spot is the RWA tank up on Rimmon Road. When you're going into Seymour, you see it on the right hand side. That would basically be a telephone pole sticking in the air with an antenna on the top of it. The police department site, which is already existing, which we just redid. 21 Bradley Road, which is existing, which it's already there now. The Sprint Oak Lane site is right now is just a receive site, but we're looking to make it also a transmit site. So you can see where it covers all this area. It fills a lot of area in. Plus it also fills in Route 15 where the fire department goes up there quite a bit. And the AT&T site, which is on Shepherd's Farm on 69. So we're looking to add the 3 sites that would give us a lot more coverage and would be more beneficial to the town. I'm throwing this part over to Tony.
So the new radio system budget is $2.1 million. And Sean, if you could talk a little bit about the timing on the ordering of the system.
Sure. So why we're all here tonight and why this was basically, we met a couple weeks ago with the radio committee, and we felt it was in due diligence to bring it to these boards tonight, was Motorola is offering a discount anywhere between $100,000 to $150,000 if we were to order this system before by the third week in December. So it made sense. We weren't talking a few $100s or a couple $1,000s. I mean, it's significant money. So we need to do this, whether we do it in December or we do it early next year. This is something that has to be done, but it would be in our best interest to order it sooner than later so we can capitalize on saving that money.
John, is the $2.1 million, is that reflective of the 100,000 or the 150, or is that, in other words, with doing it before December, bring that down to 2 or under?
Yes.
Thank you.
The 2.1 is the gross figure,
Yes.
not the net. The new system, just some parts of the new system would be included are the, Sean indicated earlier, the new radio console, new dispatch software for the dispatchers, portables and mobiles for public works, and the antennas and additional tower sites. Those are some of the items that will be included. In terms of maintenance, as indicated earlier, it's a 12 to 15-year lifespan. This is an IT-based system, so there's some continuously updating and to the system, which is not based. The current system is not like that. So, current annual maintenance contract is about $25,000 a year, and I believe that covers labor for them to come out and fix parts and
Right, and to maintain the system.
maintain the system for us.
Maintain the system
Right.
at hand. But if any parts go
We
down,
have to pay for the parts.
we have to pay for the parts
Right.
and the labor.
The annual software maintenance on an upgraded system is about $25,000 a year. So there's roughly the same amount. There's an option, should the town choose to, which would be for about $45,000 a year to include hardware and software replacements. So if we chose to do that, that would be a budget figure and a budget decision. We could do that, or we could choose just the software maintenance, software updates, and purchase the hardware and software on our own as we deem appropriate. So that's a decision for a later date.
Roughly the same.
Correct.
We're currently paying something around 20,000.
25,
a year,
right?
25 a year.
Correct.
For maintenance of our current system.
That's correct. There are some other ongoing costs I want to bring to your attention. There are T1 lines, which is how the data is transmitted between the sites, and those, it's about $1,000 a month that we currently pay. If we were to use the Seymour Tower, as Sean indicated, the rental of about $1,300 a month. So there's a rental charge associated with that. Benefit of that is increased coverage. So should you not want to do that, then your coverage wouldn't be as
Also on the Seymour site, just to talk about the 1,300, we're also jumping on the state fiber line, so we wouldn't be paying the $250 for a T1 line at that location.
So there's some savings there.
Right.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have to buy a shelter because there's already a shelter there. So on generation, that includes power and everything else. So that $1,300 a month, when you break it down for all the stuff that we would need, it's not really that bad.
So it's basically $12,000 a year for the T1 sites. That's additional
Correct.
operating
Right,
costs.
that's what we pay currently.
Oh, we pay that now?
Yeah.
So again, that's not additional.
That's not
operating-
additional, that's just an ongoing cost that we have now.
Okay, but the Seymour Tower
That's
would be
additional.
additional?
Right.
Okay.
Because
thank you.
the other towers at the transfer station, which is obviously our site.
Right,
But
okay,
we maintain the generator, there's a generator up there.
okay.
Right.
Generator up there,
Yep.
yeah.
So the rental at Seymour for 1,300 is probably more like 800.
If you take away all the other stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's correct. And just a breakdown of the some of the major budget items is the radio console at the dispatch center is $500,000 approximately. The main radio infrastructure, a little less than $1.3 million, is basically all of the infrastructure work, the tower sites, the antennas, the and all the work for it, and be in back of the public police facility. There's a dispatch software upgrade. That's roughly $100,000, and their site work is $225,000. Just as an item worth noting, the inclusion of public works into this project is roughly $300,000. So that's the approximate cost of adding public works for not only the portables, the additional channel, right, and also additional work on each of the towers. So that's our $2.1 million figure. The so if we have the approval, once the approval, the town receives approval for this, it's roughly a year, correct?
Yeah, it's a 1-year turnaround, so if we, like Beth was talking about, if we were to sign it in December, hopefully by next December, we should be up and running on it.
And so some of the timeline is this would be a borrowed project. So timeline as indicated was once the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance approve of the project, it would then be sent to voters for approval, and then we look to purchase the system off state contract. This is a similar system that the state uses for all of their 911 for their police, state police, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So this would be the same type of system. So they've went out to contract first and purchased these on a regular basis. So we would use that contract, and we would bid the civil work, do competitive bids for the civil work. And as we indicated, it's about a 12-month completion.
In terms of approval, is this referendum
Yeah.
or,
Well,
or
it's
town meeting?
It's
We're
Town
gonna-
meeting.
however the selectmen
We're
want it.
gonna hopefully vote to go to a special town meeting in December. Both boards.
Okay. Can I ask actually about an interim plan? Because, I mean, this is really disturbing to kind of hear those live examples. You had mentioned $15,000 to $20,000 to get temporary base stations?
It's it would be a temporary console. That was the number that was thrown out, but there's nothing hard yet. We would have to really look into what we would have to do. But it is, if we do decide to move forward, talking to Paul and a couple other people, we might be able to get we would get a new console. They would treat it as the radio system being one, the console being a separate phase. So we could do the console in probably a 90-day period to get the new console up, because the new console will work on the old system, and then when we do the main brain of the radio system, it would just be carried over onto the new system, so we could do that.
I'm just asking from the perspective of, are we really asking for more than 2.1 million? In other words, that's the total cost of the new system, but what's going to get us through this next year until it's operational?
Well, if we say we go through this and say in December we're good for it, we could actually start the work and get the console on order, and we can get it probably installed in the next 90 to 100 days.
Okay. Thank you.
I had a couple of questions, either for you or for Tony. What is the lifespan of the system,
Of the new system,
of the new system?
12 to 15 years.
Okay, and if we take that higher premium maintenance agreement, does this thing guarantee this an infinite life? It gets repaired and replaced as needed?
Here's the thing with technology, right? So it would be, I would think we would want to do that, not because it's more money, but what has to happen is it's all IP based now, so it runs off of computers basically at each site. So a computer's probably going to be good on a radio system probably for 2 to 3 years, and then we would need to upgrade. If we did nothing, say for 3 years, and then we have a computer go down and we didn't buy the software up to that point, we would have to buy all the previous updates and go there. So even though we're looking at an additional $25,000 for all that, when we do it in 3 years, at that point it could cost us $75,000 to get up to that, and then plus the computer, plus all that. The additional $25,000, the $45,000 or $50,000, what we would do would basically guarantee all the parts of the radio system and software. So if we had a computer go down, it's covered. They put a new computer in. So the city of Stanford did this about 10 years ago when they did their system, and they're a lot more. Their system was roughly $15 million. They pay, I think, $750,000 a year in maintenance for software and hardware. And basically, their system's 10 years old, and they have one part left to change out, and their system is completely new, and their system's 10 years old. So instead of paying it in piecemeal or doing one big thing like we're doing here, basically, if you pay for it over time, if you're paying for that $50,000 every year, give or take, whatever it is, we don't have that actual number yet. It was an estimate. Basically, we would keep walking into a new system or updated system, but when technology eventually changes, like we all see, then we would have to look for a new system. So yes, there is it could last us. This system could last us 17 or 20 years.
When do we need to come up with a payment if we decide to do this? In other words, how much do we have to pay up front to get this contract underway?
Typically are you asking how much we'd have to pay the contractor or the borrowing?
No, if we have a $2 million system that we're getting from Motorola,
Right.
we want to secure that contract before December for the discount. How much do we have to come up?
Typically, unless they're thinking otherwise, they'll typically do it with a purchase order and a commitment on our side to purchase the system. They wouldn't require, as best to my knowledge, and they didn't last time, any upfront money or deposits or anything like that.
Tony, when do we make the first payment? When do we expend the?
My guess is it'll be different schedule for each of them, but they're usually progress payments on like the construction and the site work.
Mm-hmm.
But the radio systems most likely wouldn't be paid until it was completed and tested.
So there's a good possibility none of it comes into this budget this year?
Yeah, the borrowing, that's a different issue.
That's
It's the one we have to pay, and that's the borrowing issue, which I will get into after this is complete.
When you guys are done with questions, see that presentation for all of us.
But the debt probably won't be until if we borrow the money this summer, when we have other debt to reissue, the first principal payment was not due until a year after.
Okay.
So,
Sean, I had a question on the handhelds. You said the system is compatible with the handhelds that we have now, which are new. Down the line, we're going to have to replace those handhelds. Can we sort of anticipate that the new handhelds will also be compatible with the system?
They are. These are the radios that we have, the police department has. These radios are compatible with the new system.
Right. And what about when we have to replace those when those die?
We just buy the updated version of these.
And that would be the case regardless of what system you have?
Correct.
Did you evaluate the tower on the top of the Woodbridge Country Club as far as
we did,
service?
and there's I'm going to say, if I remember correctly, and we were part of this, there's a ridge line, or the way the topography is, it doesn't give us enough. It doesn't give us enough coverage. Bang for our buck. We're better off at the Oak Lane site.
And just to follow up on previous question, your presentation was pretty impressive, but what impresses me is not that you need a new phone system, but a new radio system, but the radio system that we have now is not really reliable all the time. Do we have a quick fix for that? Can we do something with cell phones? Can you set up some type of a conference line so that you can have a backup communication when this type of thing happens?
We don't. What we're doing is we're in talks with Norcom right now to have them come down and try to optimize the system to the best that we can at this point in time. Mm-hmm. But there's not much we can do until we start upgrading the towers and the equipment in the sites. So, like the police department tower, the antenna is brand new. You approved that money back in June, July, somewhere in that area. That tower, that antenna's new. The antenna down on Bradley Road is new. We did that project about a year ago. So over time, the antennas usually should be changed every 10 years because they're out in the elements, they crack and everything else, so they should be replaced. So we replaced 2 out of the 3 antennas, and our coverage really hasn't gotten better, or nothing's really changed. So that really shows us is the equipment that it's showing its age and it's deficient. There's not much more we can do to fix that until we order a new system and get it on order, which it's sad to say we're gonna have to deal with that over the next year. That's basically where we are. I don't believe there's a temporary fix in this. Sure.
So right now, the weakest link in the system, as it sits today, is the consoles. And Sean addressed that within 90 to 120 days that can be replaced. The order for all the equipment would go in at the same time. In the meantime, there's a lot of peripheral equipment and support equipment that has to get installed and sites developed. But there are base stations, new base stations that are in that system that if you had a base station go bad and parts were not available from one of these 15-year-old base stations that you have in service now, one of the new stations could be put into service to replace it as a stopgap measure without having to go out and buy another piece of equipment. It just puts it into warranty. As for cell phones, I cringe every time somebody says that. There's a huge difference between shoot and don't shoot, or evacuate the building or send more men in the building for a fire. Cell phones are not public safety rated. When we're talking about a public safety system, we're talking about a communications that has to get from point A to point B every time. And 99.99% of the time is a great number. Cell phones are 99.0.
I get that. And now is not a great number either.
No, it's a horrible number, but it's basically hold your breath from the date that you place the order until the consoles come in and they can get them in. You can put mobile units on power supplies or what we call control stations at the PD, but that's local coverage. It doesn't get out to the fringes and do the simulcast of the other system that you have now for coverage. So it's the best answer I can give you.
Yeah.
So,
Is there can be paid to get 3 or 4 months? Seriously.
Well, it has to be brought in, it has to be configured, it has to be loaded with software, burned in, programmed. I think 90 days is a pretty ambitious number.
Okay.
In fact, when Sean told me that, I was kind of surprised, but it is the right number.
Okay.
Okay, if there are no other questions at this point, we'll introduce Tony. We'll do the depth presentation.
Okay.
And I think we have copies for the boards.
yes, we have
At the end,
copies
yeah.
we can hand out.
Just of this part.
Actually, I think
Okay.
sit up there so I can face the screen.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Do come back.
Okay.
We're sitting there, and he said, "No, I don't just bring her." I said, "Listen to this thing. It's when I've been here." I was like, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah, right. She's gonna lump other stuff together.
I don't know.
Aaron definitely gonna talk about
This is where you're.
Yeah.
You guys.
I guarantee he's gonna roll some of the
Spring.
Board of Ed stuff.
Right, 'cause we'll get a-
Oh, okay.
There's no way he'll bump it enough.
Okay, I'll make that correction, thank you. Paul just reminded me that Motorola will probably ask for 30% upon order. So we will have some outlay initially. The idea here is to borrow for this project, and the town has some country club notes that are due in July, so we would borrow at that time. So the money that we put out before that, we would just have to essentially borrow from the fund balance or from the general fund on a short-term basis until it's reimbursed by the borrowing. Because to go out separately for a $2 million issue would be very expensive and probably not worth the cost. So currently, I usually do one of these every year, so I figured I would do it now. Would be a good time to do it. The town currently has a $22 million in long-term debt. That's the principal outstanding as of June 30th, 2018. For bonds that we've issued for the new fire station, open space. The open space is primarily the Elderly track and the Racebrook track. Beecher South roof, the library, public works, soil remediation, which is just finishing, and public works facility and the recent Beecher project. So we've done a lot of projects in the past, say 10 years, and that's evident by some of those projects there. We do have notes outstanding for the country club. That's at $4.9 million. And the recent Beecher renovation, which we're still waiting for the state grant process to end, to wind up, so that may or may not be necessary. At some point, the town has to convert the notes from the country club to bonds, so that's something that we have to do soon. The Amity also are responsible for our portion of the Amity debt. That's called overlapping debt, and that's current and proposed for June 30th. It's all current debt at this point, but June 30th, 2018 is $11.8 million. The existing debt service is at $2.8 million as indicated in our budget. It's for the same projects, and it's the principal and interest payments that are due each year for those projects. That also includes note principal and interest payments for the country club. And our portion of the Amity debt is $1.3 million. That's our debt service for the current year. So you can see, this is a big chart, so I wanted to give you the handout so you can see the figures. But what I wanted to point out is that this is the debt that we have for each project. Existing bonds are here. Top. These are bonds that we have already issued, and it goes out 10 years. This is a 10-year snapshot. You can see how much is owed on each issuance. This is the notes we have for the country club, and this is an estimate that we will have to convert these to bonds somewhere here. So I made some estimates on interest, and this is the issue we have to. This would be the remaining debt on the Beecher renovation here. If you add our Amity portion to that, you'll see we're currently at about $4.2 million for our existing debt service. And I have a graph that shows this graphically here, which shows you in blue the existing debt. So you can see that we have here some drop-offs when we pay off certain items, and those 3 points that cause it to reduce. When you add to that our proposed debt, and as part of any debt analysis, you have to look at what debt we have on the horizon. The only guide that we have for that currently is our most recent capital plan. So these are the 4 items in the capital plan last year. These, of course, can change as the capital plan changes and as the boards recommend different projects. Some of these can come off, can get increased, or can change. But it's important to note that in the capital markets and in all of our analysis of all of our external bodies, credit rating agencies and the like, these items are looked at to see what they feel that we have on the horizon for capital projects. So it's important to pay some attention to this. So if you add that to our debt picture, and you'll see, and I made some assumptions on when that would be added. You can see how that layers in here so that controls the amount of debt that we issue as we go out. in the later years. This includes the $2 million for the radio and some of the other projects. We are also responsible for Amity's debt service. And so this, as I indicated earlier, this analysis includes the existing and proposed Amity debt service. So Amity has a existing debt of service of $1.3 million, but out into the future there are some proposed amounts for some additional borrowings, which I've included in this chart. So if you flip that page, you'll see the green represents the Amity debt. So this is a complete picture of the debt service in each year for the next 10 years based on the assumptions we discussed and how it would impact our budget. So you can see it's relatively flat here and a sharp decline after 2024 here. So what does this all mean, and how can you tell that if our debt load is appropriate, is too high, too low? As part of a debt analysis, we have these things called debt fiscal indicators. When you look at the fiscal health of a community, there are several fiscal indicators that one would look at, and it's a complicated process, but you look at everything from taxes to grand list to tax collection rate, pension liabilities, healthcare liabilities. This is the debt portion. And it's a few of the major items for debt. There's a lot of other debt fiscal indicators that we look at, but these are the three major ones. First is debt service as a percentage of the operating budget. Our fiscal FY18 is 8.72%. Next is debt per capita, which is $3,465. And finally, debt service as a percentage of the equalized grand list. So the first one is as it's a percentage of your budget. The third one is a wealth indicator. So the grand list is a wealth indicator, and so as a percentage of our grand list, it's 2%. So if you flip the page, this is a chart of our debt, the three debt service items that we discussed, and that's out the 10-year period. We like to keep below 10%. You can see we're actually below 9% here. And so we have a pretty stable debt as a service as a percentage of our budget here. Pretty stable figure, and is below our 10%, which is an industry item that you shouldn't really go above. It's sort of a warning, if you will. If you go above 10% of your budget, it takes much greater weight, and you should really have a good reason. So what we do is we compare these to other towns like Woodbridge and those that are other AAA credits for Moody's. You can see Woodbridge on the end in yellow. Ours is a little over 8%. The average is 7.55 for us, so we're a little higher than average. But you can see there are other communities, Weston, Westport, Wilton. Keep an eye on New Canaan throughout this process. New Canaan is clearly way above 10%. So you can see we're on the higher side of average. So it's not horrible, and considering we've issued a lot of debt recently, it's actually pretty good considering you don't know where some of these towns are in their life cycle of their infrastructure. They could have a lot of infrastructure that's deteriorated, and just because you have low debt doesn't necessarily mean you have fiscally healthy community. If you have schools that are falling apart, then it's not necessarily a good thing. So anyway,
which we did talk about this afternoon, that our town took on a lot of debt recently because we did a lot of projects. We needed to do our schools and public works and the fire station.
Right.
It's all explained.
In the country.
Things that had to get done.
I mean, and whenever you look at your debt, I always like to say that you always should expect the unexpected. And those of you who remember, we had the big dig back in 2000. No one expected to have to spend $3 million on that, or $4 million. And I know in all the debt planning that we did, no one ever expected to have to buy a country club. So you always have to keep in mind that something could come up that you're not anticipating. So you always have to keep in mind that you should never,
Are there any particular factors that impact on this? For example, Wallingford being what looks like the lowest. Are there any specific factors that on these towns?
So it's just as a
Just didn't
percentage of the
spend
budget,
money.
they don't like to issue a lot of debt. If you could, but
Nothing
you
to
sort of
do
put
with the
these,
grand
when you
list,
go,
nothing
you
to
put
do
these
with-
three together and you'll see, you can see the picture.
Thank you.
Okay, then the next is overlapping debt per capita. And this is our 10-year chart. As you see, it drops here. And if you flip the page, again, you compare this to the other towns. Once again, New Canaan is the highest, and Wallingford is the lowest. And we're in a similar position. So we're on the higher side of average. You can see some of the similar towns are higher than us. Wilton, Westport, Weston. And there's Woodbridge. Last is the overlapping debt as a percentage of grand list. This is the wealth indicator. And this is, again, our chart. We're a little over 2%, and then we decline. Flip that. And this is where we have the biggest exposure. If you look at New Canaan, once was very high on the other two charts. They're low here because they have a very large and robust grand list. We do not have a grand list like New Canaan, so you can see we're high. Now, it's not necessarily, in and of itself, it looks like it's a bad thing, but when you combine it with all of our other items, it's not. It's not horrible. It doesn't reflect, it won't result in a credit downgrade or anything, but it just shows you where we have a weakness, and that's the grand list. We've had no growth really in the last few years, and so you can see that's evidenced by this chart. But on some of the others, we did pretty well. So that's sort of where we are with our debt, and hopefully that helps you get an understanding of where we are and where we're headed.
I would wait to actually do the.
If we're going to issue bonds, you mean for the yeah. So we have to pay bond counsel, draw up documents, a financial advisor to help us with access to credit markets. We pay Moody's for a credit agent for a credit rating. There's payment. We have to pay for. It's a process where we can secure payment so that there's a third party that makes sure that our payment gets to where it's supposed to go. And so there's credit, there's costs to issue, and they're relatively the same whether you do a $2 million issue or a $10 million issue or a $30 million issue, because you're paying for time for professionals. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't take them more time if the number is different. So if we combine it with other projects, then we only pay the issuance cost once.
Now, besides converting the notes to bonds,
Right. And there's a small issue at Beecher where we have to wait until we go through the grant process, the audit process. If we can issue the $600,000 and then not need to issue it, and then we borrow too much. Or if we don't issue it, and for some reason, when you go through the grant process with the state, with the school construction, there's some estimates, there's some assumptions built into it, and then it's audited at the end. So if there was an assumption that was incorrect and it gets reduced by $200,000, then we would be short.
So you basically want to wait until
Right.
we get this squared away with the state.
Correct.
And then you can do Country Club, Beecher,
Right.
and
In this. Yeah, and under normal circumstances, it would have been straightened out with the state already, but
yeah, right.
given the
Good luck
current
with
climate.
that, right? So what is your anticipated time? What's
So
reasonable?
we have to either issue notes or bonds for the country club and for the school, or do nothing for the school. But the country club is definitely, we have to either issue notes again or bonds in July, because they're 1-year notes that we issued and they mature after 1 year. So when you issue notes, you're basically rolling the dice that the interest's not going to go up. As opposed to bonds, you fix it and then that's it. So we're in a low interest rate environment. So if we can, it would make sense to issue bonds. But okay. Any other questions or?
I was wondering what your crystal ball shows on the interest rate change.
We've been we sort of keep an eye on the treasury and the treasury curve and the yield curve and so far we've been pretty lucky and I just don't know how long it's going to last. If I knew that, I would
Yeah.
be doing other
Things
things.
are a little bit in flux in the treasury right now.
Thank you so much.
Hopefully that was helpful.
Thank you. I want to
Okay.
thank Commissioner Kravitz and Sue Frein from the Fire Commission for coming this evening and joining us. I'm sorry I guess he left, but thank you. Thank you for joining us. And it's just 6 o'clock, so we don't have to adjourn,
No, we're just gonna.
you're just gonna get up and go, give us a minute, and then we'll start with public comments, because it's 6 o'clock.